Anytime we experience loss, it doesn't just have to be the death of a loved one. It might be the loss of a relationship, or the loss of health, or the loss of normalcy, or the loss of a job. The emotions that we feel because of the loss we've experienced, that's called grief. And Jesus has some very specific things that he wants you to do with your grief. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, my name is Chris Pavla, and welcome to What Jesus Says About, where Jesus speaks for himself, so you can respond for yourself. And don't forget to hit like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on what Jesus says about topics important to you, topics like what Jesus says about grief. Now, you might imagine Christians and followers of Jesus as people who are happy all the time, and when bad things happen, they just bury their head in the sand because after all, if you're not happy, then you're not very holy. But when you look at what Jesus says about grief, you see that that's not the picture, at all. In fact, there's this one time where Jesus is talking to a crowd of people, and he tells them a series of perplexing, contrasting kind of statements. And right in the middle of it, he says, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." Now, if you're hearing that and you're going, wait, what? That doesn't make sense, and then you're not alone, because everyone in that crowd had kind of the same reaction, going, wait, Jesus, what do you mean, blessed are those who mourn? Especially when you consider that the word blessed that he uses could also be translated as happy. So literally, he's saying, happy are the sad. I know, right? But that's where the second half of Jesus's statement becomes important, because he says, happy are the sad, for they will be comforted. And this might sound wishy-washy to you, but actually modern psychology kind of agrees with Jesus here. We know today that if you suppress or repress your grief, you'll let it out in unhealthy ways. If you don't let it out, you'll act it out. And grief isn't just something you experience with the death of a loved one. Grief can be something you experience because of a loss of a job, or loss of health, or loss of a relationship, or the loss of normalcy. And when we stop playing the tough guy act, keeping a stiff upper lip and don't bother anyone, and we start mourning and expressing our grief, that's where we start to find healing and hope, or in the words of Jesus, comfort. So how do we do this? Well, the first thing you can do is to have a conversation with somebody who loves you and tell them how you're feeling. And in that conversation, you'll start to excavate the emotions you're feeling and be able to name them. But to really live out what Jesus says about grief, that's a conversation he wants you to have with God. So you might just start with, "Dear God, I am grieving the loss of ... and then you fill in the blank yourself. It might be, "Dear God, I'm grieving the loss of my spouse," or "Dear God, I am grieving the loss of my health or my income," whatever it might be for you. Just tell him. And a happier, blessed version of you is waiting on the other side. Now, Jesus says a whole lot about a whole lot. That's why I'd be honored if you would hit like and subscribe so you can stay up to date on what Jesus says about topics important to you. Also, I've got some other videos that will maybe help you in your time of grief that you can check out right here. Thanks so much, and we'll see you soon.